Woo! Mykel Williams is the 11th pick in the 2025 NFL Draft to the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to break him down. He was one of our favorites in this class, a high floor and high ceiling. What is that ceiling for Mykel Williams? We're breaking him down in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft right now on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker. Peacock with you. He's right here. This is not an illusion. If you're watching on YouTube, we are together. We are at the 49ers Rush Draft Party right now. If there's any audio weirdness, let us know in the live chat here. And we're excited. We're having a fun time here breaking down the San Francisco 49ers draft, watching this draft. And I do want to thank everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Met so many everydayers here at the draft party. It is a party. We're having fun. I think Demo Lenore is going to come by here in a little while. We'll see if he makes it onto our podcast in the next 30 minutes or so here. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn and LinkedIn Jobs. They help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Is Mykel Williams, Croc, the youngest player in this 2025, the youngest defensive lineman, one of the youngest players in the entire draft, just 20 years old. Just let's pause for a second on the age of Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams is going to sign his second contract with the 49ers and be the same age that Ricky Pearsall and Renardo Green were when they were drafted last year, right?
Now, this is a guy that both you and I were excited about. And I think you got the 49er fan base, you got our audience really excited about what he potentially can be. You threw out names like Aldon Smith, talking about his length, his size, some of his abilities, some of his strengths, and things that I feel like he needed. We talked about this on your most recent mock draft, where does he fit in? And I think right now, day one, he replaces, I think, what is a big need for the 49ers, a Charles Omenihu, Arden Key type of ability, but at a much better prospect. So if you told me right now, hey, you'll get Charles Omenihu, but somebody that has a much higher upside and much more potential than what Omenihu has been at the NFL level, I think that's something to really be excited about.
Yeah, at the high end of a comp for what Mykel Williams could be, I keep going back to Aldon Smith and those long arms, that natural strength that you're born with. Aldon Smith, remember, was a redshirt sophomore, I believe, when he came out of Missouri, just 20 years old like Mykel Williams, and he was just a pup. Jason Pierre-Paul was one of the comps that I think Dane Brugler used in his Beast draft guide. And there's just so much more, I think, with someone like Mykel Williams. And there's a lot of reasons to like this pick. There's a lot of reasons why, in the end, and he was a little bit of a slow burn prospect for me. In the end, I kind of settled on him as someone who made a lot of sense for the San Francisco 49ers. And in the last week or so, all of a sudden, there was a lot of hype. Like, he might not even get to pick 11 for the 49ers. And this dude was like being mocked in the teens, in the 20s, ended up being the 11th pick for the San Francisco 49ers. But I went back this week and I watched old Missouri Aldon Smith highlights. And Aldon Smith was raw as rain coming out of school. I didn't see the prospect that was on the San Francisco 49ers when I watched that. I watched the guy, and I challenge anyone out there, go watch the Missouri highlights. You don't have to go too deep. Just watch the highlights from Missouri of Aldon Smith, man. And I'll be damned if it doesn't look a lot like Mykel Williams from this 2024 season. This is a dude who is let's go just to the measurables with Mykel Williams. 6'5", 267 pounds at his pro day, still just 20 years old, 34 and about a half-inch arm, so not quite the 35-inch arms that Aldon Smith had. Ran a 4.77 40-yard dash. And again, a lot of these measurables are very similar to Aldon Smith. And I'm not going to put that on the young man that he's going to be the next Aldon Smith. I'm just talking about that's what the raw tools are. 1.61 10-yard split is really good for a man his size on the defensive line. And again, he's the best run defending at 20 years old. He's the best run defending edge prospect in this class, Croc. And so that's where the floor is. And we heard John Lynch a couple of days ago, right, talk about what they're looking for in an edge rusher. What do you look for in that wide 9, the defensive end? He said, you got to come smash people in the run game and set a hard edge. And Mykel Williams can do that. And he's got to burst off the line. He's got get off, which I think is really important for Robert Saleh, Chris Kusurek, and the 49ers defensive line. And he's got a closing burst as well. He's kind of got that he's got that length and that range as a tackler, and he finishes. And I think there's a lot more to come in the sack department as well for Mykel Williams as he progresses as an NFL player.
I think for me, you just look at the 49ers depth chart and where they're at right now. And I think over the last week or so, I've really harped on the 49ers have to get better in the trenches. You're looking at a defensive line with Gross Matos having to start, Kevin Gibbons having to start, Elliott having to start alongside Nick Bosa. Obviously, you're excited about Nick Bosa, but now you add a guy like Williams. I think that solidifies part of your defensive line. Now, the 49ers aren't done yet on the D-line, and we are hoping that, obviously, you want to see the 49ers get better in the trenches offensively as well, but on the defensive side of the ball, they need a defensive tackle. Matt, right there in the chat, he's spot on right there. Definitely need more defensive tackle now, and that's somewhere else the 49ers can attack. So you start pairing guys like Williams with another defensive tackle that can really push the pocket. Now the 49ers can get back to some of their roots that made Robert Saleh look really good as a coordinator with the 49ers during his tenure there.
Absolutely. There's some interesting stuff in the chat here I want to get to. And this is one of the things I landed on when we were looking at all of these prospects. And people were mocking Jalen Walker to the 49ers. Mykel Williams, Georgia teammate. He's a good prospect. I liked him. I liked his tape. Talking about Ezeraku and talking about James Pierce and some of these players. And LKV in the chat nails it. You stop the run, you earn the right to rush. And if you can't stop the run first, you're not going to get to 3rd and 8. So you can pin your ears back and go get the quarterback. So I think it's really important. And again, I think there's more there as a pass rusher from Mykel Williams. He had 5 sacks this year, 4.5 his first 2 years. This dude was such a beast that he walked onto, and again, this is a young guy, 20 years old. So we're talking about a 18-year-old kid walks onto a national championship Georgia team with Jalen Carters and Nolan Smiths and walks out there and earns a role, gets 4.5 sacks. He matched Shamar Stewart's sack total his freshman year at Georgia in Shamar Stewart's entire career, which is why, if you want to talk about production, Shamar Stewart, his production was just way too low for me, and you see it on film. And when you look at Mykel Williams and you see him on film, you see the ways that he wins, and you see the ways that he can still get better. And one way, if we're going to continue on the Aldon Smith path, one way that I think Mykel Williams can get better is using his length even more than he already does with those long arms and big hands, and being a little bit more violent with his hands. Like, lean into that size. Like, you don't have to pretend that you're 6'1", 240 pounds. You are 6'5", 270. Act like it, right? Punch these dudes and move them out of the way. And I think he'll grow into that because, again, he's just a pup. And I'm excited to see what Mykel Williams is. And, Croc, I think one of the biggest things for me, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday with Mason Graham. One of the reasons I love Mason Graham, and some people are like, oh, maybe he'll fall to the 49ers just because he doesn't have a high ceiling. And people are like, oh, maybe Mykel Williams doesn't have a high ceiling as a pass rusher. I think it's really important for the 49ers to hit on this draft pick and swing on a player who has 0 production like Shamar Stewart, even though there's some upside with Shamar Stewart, not to swing on a player who has character issues, who has work ethic issues, who you have any questions about. And for me, Mykel Williams just checked all the boxes. So maybe he ends up just being a double, but I'm okay with that. The 49ers really need a double, but there's potential for even more than that for me. That's why I like Mykel Williams. There is a high floor. There's also a high ceiling for me with this guy.
Yeah, and I'm looking at also how can he help the 49ers next year? This is a team that did not play well against the run really over the last 2 years. They haven't been this great run-stopping defense. So you got to start there, right? Even as a high school football coach, I'm thinking we got to force teams to do something they don't want to do. Everybody wants to, solidify their offense right now and get things going with being able to run the ball. Take that away from these teams. And I like what the 49ers are doing there. Get a guy, he's going to be stout there day one. Very stout against the run. He's got some really big side there. So now our need to build on this and develop some pass rush moves. He's a little there, but he has the ability. You watch some of his highlights, you watch some of his film, you see his ability to kind of redirect and then explode towards the passer. Those are things I'm really excited to see him continue to build on.
Absolutely. More on Mykel Williams. We're going to talk a little bit about what's gone on so far, what is continuing to go on as we're live here throughout the middle of the first round of the NFL draft. It looks like some of those guys that you hope might slip to the second round for the 49ers starting to slip off the board here. What the 49ers might be looking for on day 2 of the NFL draft next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. And LinkedIn's new features, LinkedIn knows that you're wearing so many hats as a small business owner and operator. They've got new features like helping you write job descriptions and then quickly getting your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add that hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture. Double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, Peacock, there were a couple guys that we were thinking about, where would they go? So Kenneth Grant, he went off the board. He was one of the quicker guys. He was a guy that some people thought may go down to the second round. He's drafted high in the first round, going to the Miami Dolphins at pick 13. And that's not the only guy that went a little bit higher than some people may have expected. All right, Walter Nolan goes at pick 16 to the Arizona Cardinals. So he will be playing against the 49ers in the NFC West. 49ers won't have the, fortune or luck to be able to potentially even trade up into the first round to get him later.
Yeah, and I really wonder how the 49ers felt about Walter Nolan in the end. Clearly, they didn't like him as much as Mykel Williams. Again, I think it was that clean profile that Mykel Williams has across the board. He's got the height, weight, speed. He's got the high character that you're looking for. He can grow into his role with the San Francisco 49ers. I think Walter Nolan might just have been a little bit too risky off the field for the 49ers. Not too risky for the Cardinals at 16, and who knows, if the Cards were at 11 and the Niners were at 16, maybe they would have drafted Walter Nolan with who was available for him. Because I know they did a lot of work on Walter Nolan. I know he was someone that they were considering in this draft, and he's not going to be someone that sneaks down and is someone that the 49ers can get around too. But there's still a lot of those guys that we really like that are still on the board that the Niners could be interested in. And John Lynch talked about it. They got 20 first-round grades. Some of those guys are going to slip deep into round 1 and probably into round 2. Who knows? Maybe one of those guys gets all the way to 43, but I got a feeling, Croc, that the Niners might be going up at some point on day 2, whether it's from 43 up or from pick 75 up, because this isn't John Lynch doesn't sit on his hands, Croc. We know that.
Looking at kind of how this whole thing is kind of falling right now, this is a little bit what we expected, right? The 49ers didn't have the luxury to kind of hang around and potentially draft an edge rusher in the second round. They're just not going to be there. But defensive tackle, that's a position that's just there's much more depth in day 2. So I like what the 49ers did. If you have a high grade on a guy like Williams, draft him at pick 11, because next round or 2, you definitely can find defensive tackles that can be productive and come in right now. And again, the guys you're looking at having to play over, can you get in and play over a guy like Kevin Givens? Can you get in and play over a guy like Elliott and what they do well? I think you can find those guys on day 2. I don't know if you can find a Mykel Williams on day 2.
And that's the thing, is because we were asked in the chat here. Let's see if I can find it. We were asked in the chat about someone like Jalen Walker, who just went off the board right before the Cardinals. Who had the pick right before the Cardinals? Was that who's 15? That was the Falcons. Yeah, the Falcons needed. I think I mocked Walker to the Falcons in my last mock draft on the Peacock and Williamson show. But we were asked about Jalen Walker and what kind of fit he was and some other of these guys for a 4-3. And I think that's a big deal. Williams, he actually fits a 4 down front. He's someone who could get after the quarterback, who already has proven he can get after the quarterback. And again, I think there's a lot more there with his physical ability, even though his pass rush is a little bit raw, and he was asked to play a lot of inside stuff for Georgia. And I think he's going to play a pure defensive end role for the San Francisco 49ers, especially early in his career. As long as they get some more guys to rush from the inside, who knows, maybe he'll be forced to rush from the inside some. But just with his length, the advantage of his length, that happens on the outside. And again, he's only 267 pounds. It's not like he's 200 pounds where you're like, oh, this guy has to rush from the inside. You have a lot bigger advantage on the edge with that extra length that he has than on the inside. You can have 32-inch arms on the inside, and actually, in some ways, it helps get there. And so where a side lies for Mykel Williams on the edge. But Jalen Walker's 6'1" with short arms, 240-something pounds. You're going to put him out at defensive end on base downs? No chance, right? James Pierce. I mean, if he's there in the second round, maybe you double up and you get that fastball off the edge. But you'd expect a 245-pound guy. He's 20 pounds lighter than Mykel Williams to hold up on the edge on every down as a 4-3 defensive end. So I think that's not only does defensive end dry out a little quicker than defensive tackle in this draft, the pure 4-3 defensive ends that you can put on the field on 3 downs, they definitely dry up. And I don't think the 49ers are going to have that option in round 2, Croc.
I don't think so either. But yeah, definitely. I like, and that's the big thing right there. I've seen a big discussion on social media. Was this the right guy for the 49ers? I think absolutely so. Moving forward, what do you expect to see from the 49ers? Do you think they just go and attack defensive tackle? Is there an offensive lineman that we see kind of maybe falling right now that the 49ers may trade back in? I have the 49ers taking defensive tackle out of Oregon. Is that somebody that the 49ers potentially may trade up for at the end of the first round?
Yeah, Derek Harmon. I'm looking at Brugler's Beast right now in his rankings. He had Derek Harmon as the number 2 tackle in this class. I had Derek Harmon after Walter Nolan and Mason Graham. So Graham off the board, Walter Nolan off the board, Kenneth Grant now off the board. Derek Harmon probably does become the top defensive tackle in this class and is worthy of a late first round pick. So his name could come off the board at any time right now in this draft. But there was some red flags that just popped up this week with some reports that maybe there was some injury stuff with him. And so does that mean he could slip even a little bit further and get closer to the San Francisco 49ers? I mean, we're talking about Derek Harmon, Tyleik Williams would come up next as, look, hey, if you want to fix the 49ers run defense in one draft, you draft Mykel Williams in round 1 and Tyleik Williams in round 2, right? And then maybe even follow up with Kyle Williams, get all the Williamses, right? Because I know Kyle Williams is your guy, pick 75 in round 3. Yeah. I mean, if you kind of eat your vegetables in round 1 and round 2, maybe you can have a little fun in round 3.
I think so. And the 49ers, you have to plan for the future a little bit as well. I think right now you're trying to start. I linebacker. I've said it a few times and I always forget his name, but there's a linebacker I don't know who he is.
Luke Farrell. Is that who? I think yeah. And more of a special teams guy. Like, I don't know if the 49ers expect him to start in games for him. So they got to do some work.
Is there a veteran free agent that you're going to target? Or do you say, you know what, man, we really like this kid out of UCLA, and he can come in right now and start and play. So even round 2, that may be something that 49ers are interested in as well. Jihad
Campbell still on the board as well. Shamar Stewart now off the board to the Cincinnati Bengals. And again, here we go. That run on defensive lineman, Croc. I mean, it's going to roll through. This draft is all about the defensive line, the talent at the top right now, and there's a ton of depth on the defensive line as well. And so I think we're going to see a ton of those players at those positions coming off the board. Craig in the chat says, Peacock is drunk. Croc needs to keep him upright. Look, hey, we could show you. I got some much lighter stuff going on than what Croc's got some brown liquor in a cup over here. We were mentioning earlier before we went on, we're keeping it professional right now, but after the podcast is over, there's a bunch of 49ers fans and a lot of listeners and everydayers. Shout out to you. And I love hearing from folks that listen to the show every day. And people are like, hey, let's buy you a shot. And I was like, we got to wait till we're done with our podcast here. But if the 49ers trade back into the end of the first round, I don't know if we're going to be in a mental space to do another podcast. You might have to wait till tomorrow for that one.
Man, it's been awesome, too, being here, meeting a lot of the 49er fans and a lot of listeners of the Locked On podcast. I saw Mosquito Killer in the chat right now. He's also down there and downstairs. So I have no idea how he's listening to us over that noise that's going on. I say noise. This is our guy, John Chapman, down there, really doing with the party. But Mosquito Killer in the chat, man. Shout out to you.
There he is. Zabel. Thanks for letting us know, Mosquito Killer. Oh, no, that's Mudslinger. That's a different guy. Gray Zabel going to the Seattle Seahawks. That's a pick that was rumored quite a bit that they were really high on Gray Zabel. Did not end up going to the San Francisco 49ers at pick 11, which was in Daniel Jeremiah's mock and opened a lot of eyes, mine included, yesterday. This is a fun draft so far. Let's go back up to the top. Pick number 2. Are you surprised that the Cleveland Browns traded out of the second pick in the draft and allowed the Jags to come up and draft Travis Hunter?
Well, yeah, I'm not surprised at all when you see what they got in return. You know, you were able to get a 2nd and 4th this year. You follow up next year with another number 1, and you're probably looking and saying, hey, you know what? We don't think that team is going to be very good next year. So if the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't this great team, and now you're picking in the top 10 again, which when you look at the quarterback situation for the Cleveland Browns, they may be in the top 10 picking as well. So now you potentially next year have 2 top 10 picks. I like that thoughts of that for the Cleveland Browns. As far as for Jacksonville Jaguars, they kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. They said, you know what? Instead of drafting a corner in round 1 and a receiver in round 2, we're just going to get the guys best at both of those positions. And I like that. And I like Travis Hunter. I hope that he's drafted as a receiver and then plays corner, because as somebody that knows both positions, it is a lot more difficult to dial in on what teams are doing offensively from a schematic standpoint, and then being able to be thrown in there at defensive back and just say, hey, go cover this guy. You know how to play cover 2.
Yeah, it's cover 2. It's man. Go out there. Go do it. I'll buy that. But why is it that the guys that do both always play corner and then dabble on offense? Like I can't ever think of a guy that's ever played wide receiver full time and played hardly any snaps except for, in Hail Mary going back there like Gronk and like trying to bat the ball down. How come they don't go the other way?
Well, years ago there was a Troy Brown playing for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, there you go.
He played
good
receiver,
call.
Then all of a sudden you're looking out there, you see number 80 covering guys, covering receivers out there in the slot. But that isn't something that you see a whole lot. You do see, the Deion Sanders out there, right? A supreme athlete who's playing cornerback and doing a great job at that, one of the best ever. And then you know what? I can go out here and in the season catch 40-something passes for the Dallas Cowboys.
I just realized, Croc, we were talking about Travis Hunter and the Browns trading down. The Browns have extra ammo now to come back up potentially. We're sitting at pick 19. You got the Steelers in 2 picks. The Browns might be coming up real soon to get in front of the Steelers, who currently don't have a quarterback. I don't know what's going on here. The Pittsburgh Steelers at some point, or at some point here in the back half of the first round. The New York Giants as well. You got Jackson Dart. You got Shedeur Sanders still out there. So
we don't have the trade value chart up right now, but do you think it's?
I mean, you got an extra.
Could you give up 2 seconds, maybe a next year third? Like 2 seconds that you have right now, and the next year third to move up, about 15 spots or whatever to get to pick 20.
Yeah, the Browns are at 33. Just here. Look, we're going to break for a second. We'll do some math. I think the Browns can absolutely get up and not have to worry about their first round pick next year. It looks like the pick might be in for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. It's flashing on pick 19. More on this NFL draft. We'll talk a little bit more about the Niners on day 2 as well. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And no more NFL draft prop. Actually, there's still some day 2 NFL draft props you can get in on at FanDuel. You can do some live parlays as well with this NFL draft if you're still going and you're still into it. But, man, the NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving customers an incredible way to get in on that action. And right now, when new FanDuel customers join, you place your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite teams or diving deep into player props and 3-pointers, steals, assists, whatever your favorite stat is you want to get in on. Or how about this? FanDuel has tons of ways to make your money, make your chances to win even bigger. Same game parlays, live prop bets, live same game parlays. It is so fun at FanDuel. Of course, Major League Baseball, hockey, and you can still bet on those 49ers to win the Super Bowl if you're pumped about Mykel Williams. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is FanDuel.com. Okay, Croc. Do we have a pick at 19? We don't have a pick yet. On the tracker, we're looking at pick 19. So we could have the Giants coming up. We could have the Saints potentially interested in a quarterback. Shedeur Sanders still out there. The only quarterbacks off the board right now is Cam Ward at pick number 1. And so Browns, Giants, Saints. We're getting to pick 20. Niners have 20 first-round grades. Could the Niners potentially move up here, Croc? It's probably not worth it for the San Francisco 49ers to get up this high. But you know what team I'm looking at? 24. The Minnesota Vikings. They only have 4 picks in this draft. They did a lot here. 4 picks right now. I think the Vikings are a team that would love to move down. Could the 49ers pull off a little bit of a sneaky move and get in front of some of these playoff teams and go grab their maybe defensive tackle of choice, or maybe someone that they still think is one of the few offensive tackles that are left on the board. We haven't talked about offensive tackle. I think offensive line is definitely in the cards for the San Francisco 49ers here. Defensive tackle is deep, so they could say, hey, Josh Connerly is still out there. Maybe Connerly. What about Josh Simmons? Could he start to slip to the San Francisco 49ers? I know he's got the knee, and that's why he's slipping, because he would be gone if he didn't have the knee, Croc, right? And he was one of our top, 4-5 players on our board, and we both love Josh Simmons. I mean, he's a no doubt NFL left tackle.
I think there were two guys that were kind of like, oh, this is my guy. 49ers are picking in the top 5. You had Mason Graham, really loved him, and I think he went where he should have went. There were a lot of people thinking that he potentially may slide outside the top 10. Clearly, that did not happen. But Josh Simmons, and I understand the injury, and it is scary, and you're seeing the history of the injury. 49ers definitely have not had much luck with that injury as far as guys being able to recover from it. But gosh, dang, you watch that film, he looks so good. Just his movement, ability. And I remember watching Will Campbell. I watched Will Campbell first, right? We watched Will Campbell first and said, dang, this guy is good. And that is a 49ers tackle. And then I watched Josh Simmons, and I said, damn, this guy is good. And he's even more so a 49ers tackle. So It is unfortunate with the injury. I think if you're just going off of film alone, this guy is a top 5 pick all day. The New England Patriots, they drafted Will Campbell. I think if Josh Simmons is available, that's the guy they would take. If I'm the 49ers right now, I probably wait because of the injury, but it would be hard as hell to not take him at pick 43 in the second round. Yeah,
you don't want to double up and take the risk of drafting a guy with a really risky injury and then spend a second draft pick to get it too. But if he falls to you at 43, man, that would be tough for the 49ers to say no to Josh Simmons there at pick 43. But at the same time, Croc, if he falls to pick 43, that probably tells you something, because a lot of teams in the league red flagged that and did not like what they saw in that knee. So maybe that means that it's probably damaged goods that you might not want to mess with if you're there. Emeka Egbuka, the second wide receiver off the board to the Bucs. It is a little bit surprising. Craig says Emeka Egbuka ahead of Golden and Burton. I know we're on the same page with Burton as well. I mean, especially for the 49ers. Like, don't be shocked if Burton goes to the Niners at 43 if he's down there as well. Like, Kyle Shanahan's punching air that he probably shouldn't be drafting Burton because he is so perfect.
I think Egbuka he's a good receiver. I think he's good. He's solid. I think he's very safe, but he's not the most explosive guy. And when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, look at some of the receivers that they have right now, right? Mike Evans, he's still very productive, still a good receiver. He's still going over 1,000 yards. All right, but he's getting a little bit long in the tooth nowadays. You see Godwin, he's coming off of an injury. All right, so he's trying to recover from that. Who are your explosive guys? So you look at a guy like Golden, who I wasn't as high on Golden as other people, but receiver, I need a little bit of explosiveness to kind of offset what this receiver group is. And Egbuka, he's just nice. He probably kind of plays a similar position as Godwin, maybe more of a slot guy as opposed to playing him on the outside in the NFL. Going here, that's a little surprising to take him because we watched the film. I know you watched it first, and you're like, Croc, tell me what you see. But I don't see a first-round guy.
Will Johnson, he was not in the first round of Daniel Jeremiah's mock. I think not running the 40, having some injury issues, hurts his stock, and not running a 40 especially hurts someone at the corner position, Croc. So he's still on the board as we hit pick 20 right now. We're not going to be able to see what the rest of the second round looks like, but I want to start talking about some of the best players that might be available for the 49ers who are still here at the end of round 1. I'm sure you have some – we like the tape of Will Johnson, man. He just didn't run a 40, so we don't know how fast he is.
So there's the injury concerns that some people have, but you watch the tape, and he was a technician. I talked about the difference between him and Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter probably relied on more athleticism, really at both positions, receiver and defensive back. But you watch the Michigan cornerback, and this was a guy that was very fluid, very technical, did a good job turning and running vertical receivers, but a lot of off coverage. I think you would have liked to see Johnson play a little bit more man press and be able to kind of see what that looked like with his speed. But if you're telling me he's there in the second round, I have no idea how the 49ers don't take him there. So there's two guys where I'd struggle to not draft at 43 if they're there, and I may wait, but it definitely would be Simmons, and I know the injury concerns, and then Johnson, who did not run. And how fast is he? I don't know how fast you need to be with how the 49ers play defense.
I don't know that Will Johnson gets past the Raiders, though, right, with their defensive scheme. And but if he does get the 49ers, I could see it. I love the fit for Will Johnson, and my comp for him, the way he played and watching him, I was like, man, that looks a lot like Richard Sherman. So, Pete Carroll will be interested in Will Johnson if he slips all the way down to the second round. In fact, at one point I mocked him to the Raiders at number 6 when I thought he was going to actually run a 40. And how slow could he possibly be, right? 4.5s guy, I think you're still okay there, right? Jahdae Barron. So the only corner off the board is Travis Hunter, and he might not play corner.
Yeah.
The league doesn't like corners anymore.
Well, I'd say that they kind of agree with us on this cornerback class because we were looking at Johnson and Barron as the true corners, and you and I were like, well, I don't think Barron is a corner, and there's too many question marks with Will Johnson and his speed and what that is. So if I had to guess, I'd expect Johnson to go off the board within the first round for sure, because I think he is that kind of talent. But when you don't know how fast somebody is, and there's just kind of questions because of the style that they play defensively, it's hard to take that guy high. Barron actually has the speed, but watching his film, that wasn't something that just jumped out to us. And I was like, I think we're watching more of a safety / nickel.
Yeah.
So a guy that potentially can be, a Jimmy Ward type guy. The thing was Jimmy Ward actually ran and he ran well. Barron ran well, but still looks more like that caliber of a prospect as opposed to the number 11 overall pick that they tried to kind of mock him to.
Played so little man coverage in college and doesn't have outside cornerback length. I think he's a nickel. He's an inside guy all day. Could be awesome at it, but we've seen the league turn their nose up at nickels. Like those guys go in the second round, even good ones. Branch, Cooper DeJean. So I think Jahdae Barron might have the same fate in this draft. And so that's why I'm not shocked at all that he's fallen to the late first round. And who knows, he may still be there on day 2. So those are the corners. And by the way, Gus Bradley, I think it was his quote. He said something like, I can find zone corners at 7-Eleven. Remember all those like late round guys they just found on the street, late round picks of the Seattle Seahawks and Legion of Boom. And so I was shocked the 49ers were getting mocked cornerbacks at 11. And to be honest with you, I might be surprised unless Will Johnson's still there at 43. The Niners go cornerback in the next couple picks here. Looking at the best available, we got Derek Harmon. We talked about him. James Pierce is still on the board. I wouldn't be shocked if either one of them fall a little bit further than people expected. Jihad Campbell and the other line. So no linebackers no pure linebackers. Jalen Walker went. He's going to be an edge in the NFL. He's going to be that odd front edge, I think, in Atlanta. I think that's a nice fit for him. But you got Jihad Campbell and Carson Schlesinger at linebacker still available. Those would be in play for the San Francisco 49ers for sure. Pick 43. Mike Green, there's the off field. Maybe he's just off your board completely. Maybe it's a situation where, look, we can't draft one of these guys where we have questions about their character or questions about them off the field or injury concerns and whatever red flags it is. We can't draft a red flag guy in the first round. We got to have a clean prospect in the first round. But in the second round, maybe we can dabble in that, and maybe we can draft a guy that maybe needs a little kick in the rear, or maybe a guy that needs a little mentoring as an NFL player as he matures into a professional. So I think all of those guys would be in play for the San Francisco 49ers right now. We mentioned Josh Simmons. He's still out there for the 49ers. Davanez Raku, probably edge is not on the table for the 49ers at this point. Josh Connerly, offensive tackle, would be some of the best available. Niners could definitely go safety. I know you like Xavier Watts, Malachi Starks. No safeties are gone in this class yet either. Eman Wari, Starks, Watts, all still available. Could get into day 2. And then my guy that I mocked to the 49ers in our latest mock draft in the second round was TJ Sanders, a defensive tackle out of South Carolina. I think he'd be a phenomenal fit for the 49ers. Ariante Ursary is another one who the 49ers brought in on a 30 visit. Big 6'6", 330-pound offensive tackle out of Minnesota, but really had some great testing numbers for how big he is. Would he be a fit for the San Francisco 49ers? I mean, we're starting to count up all these guys. We were already into the second round with how many names we mentioned.
Yeah. And you look at the age of Ursay, I think he fits with the 49ers as well, being a fifth-year senior.
He's played a lot. That's one thing I don't like about Ursay. He still feels a little bit raw. When you're like a fifth-year senior, I think he should be a little bit more of a finished product. Something with his hand placement, and he lets guys get his edge a little bit, which I don't like. So it feels a little rich, and some folks talking about him being maybe the next offensive tackle off the board in the first-round pick. I might not be there. I would probably lean towards that defensive tackle class that's really deep. And who knows, maybe the 49ers move up to get their guy. And again, I'll say it again, Croc. I've said it before. We should never count out Kyle Shanahan getting a toy. If Luther Burden or Travion Henderson, which are the two best skill position fits for the 49ers in this entire draft, they could be there at pick 43. I don't think we should be shocked if Kyle Shanahan talks John Lynch into turning in that card either.
Craig Naughton in the chat says, with you guys on Barron, not a fan as an outside cornerback. And again, that was something that we talked about a lot. Like, not as much of a fan. A lot of off coverage, and maybe he has the ability. I would say maybe watching him in the workout, you can kind of maybe fall in love a little bit more with some of his traits and what he's able to do and how you can coach that up. But it's hard sometimes with some of these schemes. I remember when Patrick Mahomes was coming out. That was one of my things with him. He's coming from the air raid offense and that kind of offense. And at that time, those quarterbacks didn't do as well at the NFL level, but you got to lean towards talent. So maybe they look at it like that with Jahdae Barron.
Yep.
Oh, never mind. Wait,
he's gone.
Off the board?
Yep. Denver Broncos, Jahdae Barron's off the board.
Okay.
Pick number 20. I think his best spot's a nickel. He can play outside, but the length profile, you didn't see enough man reps to be like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be an outside corner in the NFL. But maybe
they also have Patrick Surtain as well.
Yeah, they got Surtain on the other side. I think he's probably going to be a nickel. I think he's going to be a darn good one. Jahdae Barron, but not an outside corner for me. Steelers, we got to go hang out with Donald. We're out of time here anyway.
Yeah.
Croc's brother Donald's down there. He's a Steelers fan. We'll see if this is Shedeur Sanders. We'll see what happens here the rest of the first round, and we'll be back with you guys tomorrow, breaking down everything the 49ers do on day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to John Chapman, 49ers Rush Party that we're hanging out at, having a really good time. Love meeting a lot of 49ers fans and folks that listen to the show. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.